Arc Raiders is well into its, I guess you could say, second season, the first being from launch to Expedition 1, now in Expedition 2's overarching window, when we can maybe consider this Season 2, but either way, we're still well into Arc Raiders post-launch at this point, and while we await any upcoming revelations and plans for the future, 2026 roadmap, please Embark, we've heard a few things recently from those in charge at Embark that paint a better understanding of the game at large, and in particular for this video, Expeditions and the voluntary resets and wipes. Embark knows they need to do a bit better, but how will that happen? Today we're taking a look at a recent discussion with Embark and Arc Raiders design director to let you know what the future may hold. Drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe to stay updated with all things Arc Raiders and plenty more FPS content as it happens. I'd love to have you in the community. For now, let's get into it. So, projects. While right now we have two available at the moment, one for the Cold Snap event ending shortly after this video is published and being removed at that point, another one will still be available for those who choose to do the resets on the sort of seasons again, the current Expedition project. Now, to my knowledge, the items required are a tad bit different depending on if it's your first go-around or if it's your second expedition you're embarking on. Things like cooling fans versus cooling coils in Phase 2 are required, sensors versus shredder gyros in Phase 3, humidifiers as well as magnetic accelerators versus frequency modulation boxes and ion sputters in Phase 4. So yours may be a bit different than mine or someone else depending on how far you've progressed, but this is going to still be active for another 40 days and a few hours and change as the time of this video being published. And actually, then you have a few additional days beyond that as well, since that's when the window opens up, when you can accept, hey, we're definitively going to go on this expedition and reset. It's not the mark of when that will happen, but it's just the start of when you can fully commit to that. But this giant game of collection for departures was something that tasked you with a bit of everything, a special type of quest to gather things from around your experiences, a longer term quest to go along with and contribute items in the form of your inventory, and then overall cash of sorts via coins. The reward for this season-long effort: XP boosts, repair buffs, scrappy bonuses, a skin, and most importantly to a lot of people, 5 additional skill points potentially to use from level 0. Those skill points though became a somewhat point of contention, requiring 1 million per skill point in shared value between Stash and Coinbank, upwards of 5 mil. Now, in an interview with PC Games N, Virgil Watkins, design director at Embark on Arc Raiders, had mentioned one of the bigger topics of feedback was the requirements for the final stage to get the skill points, and probably going out a bit too late with that information, because we wanted to hold off until we could calibrate it around the actual economy of the player base, rather than trying to guess really early on. So then, when we chose that number, which was the 5 million credits for the full thing, we set that as an aspirational goal that some players might achieve. But then I think a lot of players took that as like, well, now I have to go and get that. We completely acknowledge that it isn't the most engaging thing to just go for money, and it has the potential outcome of disincentivizing using your gear, which is kind of what people look forward to towards the end of a reset cycle. So we're looking at revisions on that. So all in all, when it comes to the discussion about these expeditions here, it's nice to hear the acknowledgement of, yeah, this could have been done better. And I do understand where they're coming from, where they don't want to preemptively make something that is either too high or too low in regards to those thresholds for what they're trying to do. So it's kind of a weird decision in that first case scenario of trying to almost do it on the fly, where you have to kind of figure it out as you go along. So fingers crossed, this should mean that Expedition 2 and beyond will have a bit better tailored things associated with it, where the thresholds may not be something as high or maybe low or as monotonous as what they were with Season 1. But I think the biggest thing is that communication. They fully recognize that, yeah, they didn't give us a whole ton of heads up. And I think that's probably the biggest reason as to why this wasn't something that was super well received in regards to that threshold of 5 million. I don't think the 5 million threshold was necessarily the issue itself. Like, while again, kind of boring depending on who you ask just to do loot runs, sell everything, rinse and repeat, the communication not having that time to do it was something that was the system shock. I think if we have this expectation of 5 million as a threshold once again, it's no issue. Over the course of the season, that's not hard to accumulate when you're going for it. I've been busy a lot since the reset with the holidays and all that, but I've coasted my way already to 1 million in coins while not playing nearly as much as I'd like to. Plus, having over a month to go until that next reset. The problem was that 5 million was only communicated less than 2 weeks until the expedition window opened up. That blog post detailing what it would take to get those extra skill points and what you needed to know about the expedition project itself was released on the 6th of December, while the window opened up on the 17th, and the reset happened on the 22nd. So you had 11 to 16 16 days to gather 5 million in value. Doable with the right loot routes and the right amount of time played, absolutely, but when you consider how many casual players are jumping into this game, it was something that made that almost a little bit overwhelming and daunting of a task to do, where yes, it's definitely possible, but for those players that have a lot of responsibilities in their day-to-day lives, that cuts that time that you have to get that down tremendously. But if you set that expectation of, oh, I have about 60 days to complete the gathering phase of all of my items for the expedition, and then that cash, you can start working towards that, which isn't bad. However, they did say they acknowledge it's not the most engaging thing to just go for money. So if they're going to be making revisions to that in the future, what could that be? Your guess is truly as good as mine here, but could it be something like, I don't know, arc kill types, X amount of bastions, leapers, bombardiers, rocketeers, queens, matriarchs, and so on that really dictate how many skill points you get for the next go around? Quest completion, if you like do all of those versus a quarter of those. Time played, is that something you take into consideration? We'll have to wait and see. Right now, your guess is truly as good as mine. The only thing that I truly do hope for out of this, I'm game for whatever. But again, communicate it early enough to allow players to have that knowledge beforehand. Ideally, I'd love to see sometime this week, perhaps. Again, maybe Embark gives a 2026 roadmap. They give some details on the next expedition. Next week at some point, just give us enough time. I think that if you have like a month to work towards that, fine. Anything less than that, you start to creep into, well, each passing day is less and less time to work towards that. And for the overall player base, it's not necessarily something that is super advantageous at that point. But anyways, if they're going to be revising some of what we see here for the criteria on how to partake in and fully benefit out of the expedition, I'd be curious to see if we see some further incentives. In this interview, it was mentioned that Embark's also now investigating several aspects to determine what direction to move expeditions in for the future, studying data on players who are taking these things a bit slower and are still chipping away at the first expedition at their own pace, seeing if there are ways to bring a little more variety to the process and incentivize participation, saying that Embark's been keen for these players to not feel as though they're being left behind. For me personally, I think this is actually something that we can kind of chip in some ideas here for. Some of the base things that I think we see in terms of like the XP boosts or the repair buffs, the scrappy bonuses, those I think are solid, and it seems like some of those will become cumulative over time, so that if you do 1, 2, or 3, you have 1, 2, or 3's worth of those going into the future. But other things like skin resets, the reward skins you end up getting, the quest you end up having to redo, how are those something that you want to do when you take a look at it? The reset skin that we had for the first expedition wasn't anything too flashy. I feel like I don't see too many people actually running those in game. They're not something necessarily in the flashy perspective of like, I want something that super stands out, but like, it doesn't seem like it's stuck with enough players that have done the expedition that they want to use it. Other things like your rank reset, that overall level 75 skin you can work towards, and the different checkpointed items you end up earning along the way, that's still the same thing you end up working towards here from the first expedition. You did level 1 to 75, but if you already did that, you've reset it in hopes of grinding it out again, you don't really get anything that second time around here because it's still just the 1 to 75 skin. I think if you had expedition checkpointed skins like that, like expedition 1 level 75 you could work towards, reset, you have a secondary one to work towards, kind of like prestige skins in a sense, I think that'd be cool. Quest bonuses, this is one of those things that I'm very much so fighting with myself, personally speaking, because there are some nice things to get out of quests, like you get specific blueprints guaranteed out of some of the quest rewards. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think I've seen a Hullcracker blueprint anywhere other than in the quest rewards. Some ones like the trigger nades you can find elsewhere, but are also granted via quests. But some of those things are actually very impactful to have. However, doing them all over again for very bare minimum things you've already earned, and some of the cosmetics, again, you get for those, you're just earning again, so you don't get anything actually out of that reward. I think that once again, you should have an Expedition 1 verse 2 verse 3 and so on set of rewards for each of those quests to incentivize you doing them again. Otherwise, they'll just end up sitting dormant there, like in my case, after I got the Hullcracker blueprint. But one thing that I would personally love to see here, and this is just me going off on a tangent now at this point, talking about ideas for the game, I would love to see for an incentive in regards to these expeditions, a sort of passed on knowledge. In lore, the element of your raider building their caravan and heading out into the unknown is what creates this open space in Speranza for a new raider to come in and take your place. Independent of having to rebuild your stations and such, again, which was oddly worded in the first expedition that it appeared you wouldn't have to do that again in the future, but regardless of that, I think that having a sort of knowledge transfer would be really cool to have. Like your raider leaves behind some notes, learning how to craft a recipe or recipes for the next raider, so that in lore it's like, hey rookie, here's what helped me out, my parting gift to you. But in a gameplay loop sense, I think that it would be a great way to incentivize a reset, but to keep some valuable loot. Like for example, let's say you can end up keeping 1 blueprint per reset. I searched all Season 1 for the Tempest blueprint. It was my favorite gun to use back in the tech test back in April. Never really got to use it outside of picking up 1 or 2 in Season 1. Never found the blueprint, right? Like it didn't work. I couldn't use this gun that I was really excited to use. Then the reset happened and I searched for about 3 days straight of just passive blueprint hunting. We streamed a lot of that, so you might know how long we actually did that, but I got lucky and I finally found one. It's map condition specific to night raids, so annoying sometimes to find, but in theory, with this feature, you'd be able to have that stowed away and kept from level 0, level 1. Now that, I think, is where it ultimately balances itself out, because yeah, you have this super rare blueprint that you held on to, but you're still not going to be able to use it immediately. So it's not like you jump in with an unfair advantage to somebody that may not have it. You still need all those crafting items for it. 1 magnetic accelerator, 3 medium gun parts, 2 Exodus modules. None of those are super abundant in world. Stella Montes is pretty solid with this, like an assembly, but you need to be like the first one there to end up getting all of those parts here and making it out for like a crafting run on that. You're kind of out of luck if not. Otherwise, you can potentially break down other items, and you can craft magnetic accelerators with the refiner, but you need that level 3. You can craft medium gun parts, but you need that blueprint for it. And even after all of that, your gun bench to craft that Tempest, in theory, still needs to be level 3 in order to put all that together and finally get into your inventory. So like you have the knowledge imparted on you and you don't have to search for that particular blueprint, but you're still so far off from being able to use it at level 0, at level 1. So it's not this guarantee of the weapon, just a slight help in knowing, okay, I can eventually use this, instead of having to, again, spend days upon days, perhaps, searching for that 1 blueprint you may want. I think that maybe 1, 2 blueprints max per expedition is something that I think balances itself out and may be an incentivizer for players that really don't want to lose things like their blueprints, because depending on how many you have, like that's probably the bulk of a lot of your looting luck and what you're proud of going into looting. But obviously, with a reset, you can't just be like, no, I'm not going to reset my blueprints. That wouldn't really add any sort of gravity to that decision to reset. So if you could have that sort of parting knowledge that your raider gives the next generation, I think that'd be a pretty cool way to balance that out and would be a solid incentive that I would definitely want to consider when doing the expedition, personally speaking. But anyways, that's me just yapping about some of what I think could be cool for those incentives. We will see apparently some of these changes here in the future, whether it be Expedition 2 or beyond, we don't quite know, but it is something that Embark does know that the first go around wasn't the worst thing, but it could have definitely been done better. So what do you think here? Do you think 5 million is still a good target for that sort of value of your stash? We just need more time with it. Would you like to see something like a passed on blueprint knowledge from one reset to the next? What do you guys think? Let me know. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. Of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so it's a single thing regarding all things Arc Raiders and more FPS content. I would love to have you in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.